What's going on, Badger fans? We are live again from SconnieBar. A great, incredible place, and so gracious for everyone that showed up to this live show. We did a show talking about spring football, right? And now we're going to talk about really just live show. Get people up here, talk great Gard, which is always a fun one, and anything else that comes up on Wisconsin, and let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Second live show today. So if anybody's tuning in, really do appreciate y'all. And we're just going to do some comments, some questions, get some maybe from the crowd come up. But I want to start here. So this is one of the comments we got a lot. And it revolves around, we did a show recently. What grade do you give Greg Gard for his in-season coaching? Again, we got to be very specific here. We didn't say Greg Gard roster construction, off-season. We said literally just the in-season. In-season. This is a grade typical of the comments we got. F-. That's from James F. F-. He doesn't know how to motivate. Look at Wall as digressed. No confidence. Sejan standing still too much. You know, there were several comments like that in the section. I give him a B-. So again, I was way off from a lot of you. Just really quickly, again, let me reemphasize, I'm not grading the roster construction. All right. It is literally just how he did in the year. And my bigger point to this, and this is where I want everybody's take. Let me know if I'm wrong. What would other Big Ten coaches in conference do with that roster? Right? How many games is Juwan Howard winning with that roster? It's the over-under is like 2.5. Yeah. So that's what, like, again, the roster wasn't good enough, and that's on Gard, but that's an off-season thing. In season, I thought he got about what he could have out of the roster. So that's where my B- grade came in. But listen, I've been certainly wrong a lot, and I'm open to the discussion. Rajiv?
Look, Gard raises the floor of this program. I think we can all agree to that. I mean, maybe not everyone agrees to that, but I think Gard raises the floor. Look, I had a lot of complaints, and I still do, about late game situations. We talked a lot about that this year. Certainly the development of the bench, but look, we were basically a win away from making the tournament still. And I'm not saying this team was good. We talked a lot about how bad the team was throughout the year, but Greg Gard, in my opinion, is not an F-. I think I graded him a C if I'm not correct. If I remember correctly, he has a lot of improvement that's needed, and he needs to be better, but he got these guys to play hard, and I know Justin's going to touch on that a little bit. I think that, you know, with what the talent that was given to him, and I shouldn't say given to him because it's his talent, but there are issues there. But look, the guy, we beat teams we shouldn't have beat. We lost the teams we shouldn't have lost to, and there's no doubt about that. But I can't just completely write off everything he's done. Not to mention we were still defending Big Ten champions. There's that piece of it as well that has to be mentioned. I've certainly mentioned it a lot. Big Ten championships mean a lot to me. So, no, I don't think he's an F-. Does he have improvement that's needed? Most certainly. But look, I mean, we were very, very close to the tournament with not a very good team. We can all agree that the talent was not there. We weren't that far. We were not that far. A lot of close wins, close losses. That has to count for something. It's not an F-. I stand by my C grade.
I'm not going to go into how close we were, because you and I just disagree on that one a little bit. He's not F-. He just isn't. This team played hard too many times for him to be viewed that way. We can get into his philosophy with how he handles certain things like late game situations. Sure, that's great. But you look at it like the Juwan Howard comment holds a lot of water. You see a guy who is loaded with talent who can't get it to be better than what the Badgers were this year, with a team that I think there's nobody in college basketball that would pick our roster over theirs. They just wouldn't. Like the NBA talent that was on that Michigan team, for him to have that poor of a season with it is borderline incredible. Gard gets his guys to play hard. He gets them to play a little bit more rigid than I'd like to see them play. But listen, we're not talking about winning a beauty contest for basketball. He tends to get them to have a fairly high floor, which is his teams are never going to bottom out and win 8 games in a season because they don't turn the ball over. They typically will work the ball until they get a decent shot for the most part, even though the ceiling might not be where you'd like to see it every year.
Let me clarify. I didn't.
If you're watching on the stream, there's a few buffering issues, which I apologize for. There's nothing we can do about that, but really do appreciate everybody tuning in the comments. Here's a couple more questions here that let's just chop it up. Again, this is kind of a free-form show, so hopefully if you guys want to jump in as well, the people that are here would love that. We get several comments on the bench. All right, we've talked a lot about the bench. Our grades for the bench were not great, right? This is a comment from Bob M. Y'all are giving the bench an F, and yet you also wanted them to play more. If it's an F unit, why do you want them out on the court more?
Well, I would have given them a higher grade if they actually played more because I think they could have been developed more. The bench, I mean, I hate to just say, look.
I didn't mean to lean into you on that. I put that all on you.
I think when I think it was certainly the grade that I gave the which I think I was the only one who did not give them an F. I believe I gave them a D-. Carter Gilmore is simply not quite where we need from bench talent, and I think he was a big part of our bench this year. And I remember giving a little bit higher grade because Connor was off the bench for a little while, but it doesn't excuse the fact they didn't play more. They still needed to play more because, look, I've said it before. I know a lot of people disagree with me in this room. He certainly does. I love Isaac Lindsay, and I think Isaac Lindsay is a guy that actually could play very well for this team. I know that I'm very much in the minority, maybe in this whole room. I don't know. I know he agrees with me because we talked about it back there. By the way, just as a side note, those of you listening online, there are a great load of people in this room. Thank you all for being here. This has been so fun to just not even just. Yeah, I still think you got to play more because they would have been better. There's no reason that these guys look, Hodges, we talked a lot about Hodges this year. The guy barely got any playing time. So while I'm still going to say that the bench had a lower grade, that certainly does not mean that they shouldn't have played more because we don't really know what they are, right? We don't know what their talent level is because we barely even saw them.
That's exactly why my grade was as low as it was, because I have no clue what these guys actually are. Like, the grade was an F because of what they provided, the overall accomplishments of the team this year, which was they weren't used. So they didn't alleviate any of the strain or really carry us to anything because we really didn't get to see them play much. Now, are there holes in that bench? Yes, we'd all agree with that, but there are certain players on there that we have no clue what their ceiling is because we didn't get to see them out on the court enough to really establish a baseline for what they were, and also whether they could develop or not. Like, there were guys like Ilver and Hodges who, the little bit that Hodges played, he wasn't horrible out there. It wasn't like he was like a turnstile where people were just flying past him and getting dunks and layups. He was out there for 15 minutes, maybe in Big Ten play, if that. Yeah, and the guy, he really shows some level of athleticism. He looks like he's got it. He's willing to be physical out there. I question whether we could have got more from him. And I think that it really stunts a guy when you don't get to give him film to look at and say, this is what you look like in a game versus in practice. An opportunity to go out there and say, what were you thinking in this situation? And this is what I need you to do when this happens.
Yeah, let's be super honest too. Like, if you're grading the bench and the bench was the weakest part of your team on a team that doesn't make the tournament, you can't give it a good grade.
Yeah.
And we should be clear that it's not necessarily a reflection of the bench. It's a reflection of the bench and how it was used, right? And I think that's a lot of what we talked about throughout the season is there was just even in games where you could have put Hodges out there for 5 minutes, the wheels aren't going to fall off. And I just felt like we never given an opportunity. You talked about Isaac Lindsay. I think Lindsay does a lot of things from a spacing standpoint and a gravity standpoint as a shooter that even though I think there's some athleticism limitations there potentially, I think he could still have added as a shooter on the court at times during those 8-minute scoring droughts. But if you never go to it, then those players are never going to develop. And then, the grade is what it is because the bench was a hindrance to the team the entire year. So I can understand the comments from people saying, well, how can you want the bench to play more if you guys also think it's a bad bench? But part of the reason I think we've all said the bench probably wasn't a great bench is because it didn't play more. It didn't get the opportunity. So I think we're all kind of on the same board with that one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear watching this season how it played out that Gard played the guys he trusted and that he knew what to expect from out on the court. And I think that was played a major role in how the bench was used. He just didn't know what he was going to get from guys, so he's afraid to put them out there because quite frankly, we didn't have a lot of games where we separated enough to have a situation where if you put somebody out there and they play poorly, they give up 8 points. Now we're in a really bad situation because, he had no idea what he was going to get from that guy.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we're going to take a very quick break here to bring some people up on the show that want to talk about it. First, I want to just quickly ask, we have a comment here. Is there a Molly in the crowd? Because Bob Milborn says, you guys are great. My daughter Molly is a UW senior, and she's there to watch you guys. Nope, nobody's Roger. No, Bob, she is not. That's awesome. All right, if anybody wants to come up, I think we already got somebody right here. Just if you come up, keep the mic kind of somewhat close, introduce yourself, and then whatever you want to talk about, man. It's kind of free form.
Awesome. Is this close enough?
Yeah.
We good? Perfect. All right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you guys for having me up here. I was hoping the first trivia question was going to be, what's Ryan's favorite flavor of Built Bar? Because I hear that every day. Churro. We know that one.
No.
I was hoping that was going to be the big trivia question.
What's your name, man?
Finn. We were just talking about the Ohio State game, how excited we all are for it. Obviously, we all hope we'll be 7-0. It's game 8. I was wondering, what is the game before that you guys would be most nervous about? A schedule reminder, we're going to Washington State, Purdue, Illinois, and we have Iowa at home. Which of those 4, or Rutgers, Buffalo, Georgia Southern, are you most nervous about?
So, yeah, I'll kick it off because I've talked about this one quite a bit. And by the way, thank you for coming up. That's an awesome question. I've said Washington State quite a bit, right? So it's early in the season where, Rajiv, you talked a lot about growing pains, right? About potential growing pains, transitioning new systems, new quarterbacks, new players. And we're coming into a spot where we're going on the road to a team that did beat us last year. Washington State is not a pushover. So I think that's a sketchy one. Listen, if you and someone, I forget who made the point in the crowd, but someone said if you went back and watched our show last year before Washington State, we all said we're going to wax that team. Like that was a bad take.
100%.
Poor take. And I feel like fans have got back to that point where they said we're a much more talented team. We're going to wax them. Weird things happen in college football on the road early in the season. So that's mine. I think that's a sketchy one.
I agree. Washington State's the one I'm most worried about, but I'm going to also give a little credit to Purdue. They got a new coach this year, and they're going to be much more defensive than they have been in the past. And look, Purdue's always been a team that has good offense, but now they're going to change their culture. We've also beaten them many times in a row. That team, I mean, I'm from Lafayette, Indiana originally. That team hates us, and they are ready to finally get it done. They're not going to get it done this year, but I think Purdue is it's a team that I worry about because their entire culture as a football program is changing completely, and that's going to add a new wrinkle into the West. Well, the West for one more year.
Yeah, it's going to be Iowa for me. It just
with that anemic offense.
Yeah, even with that anemic offense. Well, they had that anemic offense last year, and still ended up kicking our butts.
Mm-hmm.
If their defense scores, doesn't matter. I mean, honestly, they're the only. When I look at the units that are going to be out on the field in those games, the one that I'm most scared of is still probably Iowa's defense, because even when they replace guys, they end up having a very stout defense. Now, I don't know what to make of them because of the fact that our offense is going to be so different going into the. It's why I'm not worried about games like Washington State. I feel like the floor of what this offense should be is still better than whatever the ceiling was last year. So I don't have a problem with us going into a game against Washington State where I feel pretty confident that we'll get, mid-20s at worst for points. I think the defense will still be good enough this coming year that I think that is a game we should win. Now, do I expect them to go out there and cover 17? The most worried I am about a unit that we're going to play is going to be Iowa's defense.
What do you think, Finn?
Yeah, tiebreaker.
Yeah, I to be honest, again, I would have gone first. I feel like I'm a copycat, but I said Washington State too. I plays like against Houston, 9 touchdowns, something like that. But then Washington State will be the first probably real game on the road. I wish this one was at home. I have one more thing to say, but I totally blanking on it.
I like this guy. Comes up, agrees with me.
I know. Well, yeah.
Like,
Finn, what's your give us a record prediction for next year?
That's a good one. We were talking about it. I would say probably 9. We're talking about over-unders, I don't know if Vegas has had one yet or what it would be, but I would say 9 would be my prediction. I think 8-4 to 10-2 is probably the range I'm going with. Hopefully we get surprised maybe in 11-1, 12-0. I don't agree with Locked On Gophers that our ceiling is 8-4 or whatever that was.
Nobody agrees with that.
I was telling Justin too, when Ryan, you said the Ohio State people flooding your comments after what you said. I'm like, well, that's similar to the Badger fans flooded Locked On Gophers comments when he came out with his hit piece on us last week. So I don't know if you have a show coming up with them, but I'd be interested to hear.
I would love to do a show with Kane. He's one of the few Gopher fans that I actually have talked to and have a decent relationship with. We did a crossover last year. He's a good dude. And listen, I agreed with his take on
Tell him to stop huffing paint.
I agreed with his take on new things can cause some issues, right? Can take some time. I thought that's a fair take. I thought his take on the high school recruiting has been great, but I'm not really going to take the portal rankings very seriously. It was weird, right? You can't take one without the other. And honestly, I thought his ceiling take is ridiculous.
I'm going to be blunt on that when it comes to the transfer portal rankings. I feel like they were low on Wisconsin's haul, like substantially based off of where some of the other teams graded out. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. The grades that some of these other teams are getting for guys who came over who would be rated like a 4-star, and he played like 2 games for the other team the previous year. And it's like, and it wasn't like he was a heralded recruit coming from high school either. It's like, I don't know what you're going with.
Also, he was focused on just next year. I would think that the transfer would matter more. Who matters more for us next year, Mordecai or Amari Snowden? The transfer should matter more if you're just talking about next year, which is all he was focused on.
Nope, I agree completely.
Awesome. Well, I'm
Thanks,
hop
Finn.
off. Yeah,
Appreciate
Hey,
you.
thank you so much. Yeah, it's a great comment. Let's keep going. Yeah, anybody who wants to jump up, please do it.
Another Ryan is joining the show.
Yes.
Make sure that's turned on. There we go.
All right, can you hear it? All right, yeah, just to kind of follow up with what Finn said, I definitely agree with you and Ryan about the Washington State. I feel like time zone, time of the season is going to be very important. I would also caution you. I wouldn't say anything about the Gophers because this is on YouTube. I'd hate to negative recruit. So I don't want this to be used against us.
Great comment.
Yeah, so just be careful. That boat's already sinking. We don't need to contribute to bring it on the water. I did have a question, though. Actually, I have two. More of a serious one, kind of dealer's choice. Do you want the serious one, or do you want this kind of silly one that might make you laugh, depending on how many?
Let's go serious first. And then
Serious
we'll
first.
head it
Okay, so if you want to dive into two. So my serious question would be, looking at the state of the talent that we brought in, both within the transfer portal and the recruiting, and then looking at the coaches that are going to oversee those position groups. As of today, with what we have on the roster, not what we're trying to offer, but as of what we have on the roster now, if you look at the position coaches, which 2 or 3 position coaches is going to do the best job elevating what they have? I'm hesitant because I love all the boys on the squad, all 115 of them. So I don't want to say do more with less, but who has the group that they can elevate the most?
That's a great question for starters. So I love. I didn't mean to jump in right away again. Sorry. I love Brown at the receiver coach just because he's got so much clay to work with, right? When I say clay, I'm talking just raw potential athletes, different skill sets, versatility. He's a guy that Fickle identified pretty early as a guy that he wants to coach with him. So I love that. If we like what Luke Fickle does from a talent identification standpoint, I think we have to trust the assistant coaches he wants to bring with him. And then again, I look at the receiver room, and I've talked about this a lot. There is every tool from the toolbox in there, right? There's shifty speed guys, slot guys. I mean, there's deep speed guys with Keontae. There's big physical guys with CJ Williams and others. There's polished guys with Chimere. So I think based on what we had last year, right, from the receiver group and going into what we're going to have this year, I think that's the room that elevates the most. And I like Brown a lot from that standpoint.
I will honestly say tight end. I actually think that the expectations are very low for that position coming to the season. Nobody really is expecting anyone to blow up. I think there's a couple guys that could. If Cundiff can stay healthy, I think he's a guy that could, in this type of offense, do a great job. I think Jack Pugh has a chance to be a stud in this offense, to be quite honest. He was a guy who was split out a lot in high school, who I think actually has the athletic measurables you like to have and is similar to what they had at North Carolina. And anyone wants to take a look at the stats for tight end last year at North Carolina, they had 1,000 yards out of their 3 tight ends. They will get the ball to those guys in space.
I agree with Ryan, wide receiver. I just feel like everything that Longo's doing as far as a culture shift offensively, I feel like that's with the talent, the new talent we have in the room, with transfers and recruits and everything we have coming on the pipeline, receiver to me is where I feel the most confident as far as position coaching, because we brought in a guy that actually fits really well with what we're looking for. And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of growth.
The only pushback I'd have on that with you two guys is, isn't it kind of expected though? Like, don't we kind of think that wide receiver is going to be great?
I don't know. So I would say when CJ Williams committed, we talked about this, right? And some people in the comment section talked about this too. They said, well, he hasn't proven anything. There's a lot of 4-star receivers that have busted, right? I mean, we talked about that. And what are we, 4 practices left in spring, and he looks like the most dominant guy out there potentially. Yeah. Will Pauling is a guy who I liked a lot coming in, but he didn't do a lot at Cincinnati. Yeah. So I think we're already seeing some of, and it's not all Brown, but between system, between quarterbacks, between Brown, between talent, between versatility, I think we've already seen indications of that jump happening. Yeah.
Also, can we really ever expect receivers to be great at Wisconsin? I feel like this is a new thing for us, Justin.
It is. That is very true.
What's your take, Ryan? Who are you?
I was actually going to go Coach Mike Brown, but that seems like the obvious one. And I try to fancy myself both on the Discord and in the comments on the YouTube to try to think outside the box. And one I think that's really going to have an impact is Greg Scruggs.
That's a great one.
I think if we look at our defensive line, but between the alignments, the 3 technique, the 5 technique, the 0 technique, depending on what we're going to run, whether it's a true 3-4 or 3-3-5, I think the alignment on the defensive line and their impact, both with the pass rush and the run contain, is going to be huge. And I think since for all of us Badgers fans out here, we probably remember Coach Noakes ever since he went to, was it Vanderbilt or Kentucky, another SEC team. No shade to the previous defensive line coach. I feel like we've really kind of taken a step back there. Yeah, Keanu, he's an alien. I mean, there's nothing that guy can't do. But when we look at kind of the defensive line depth, I know that it's been popular on the show to kind of question, like, where's Rodas go? Where's James Thompson Jr. go? But then when you kind of look at it, like Coach Noakes, I mean, he developed Olive Sagapolu. I mean, you look at Isaiah Loudermilk made the NFL, a really good development there. And then you look at Scruggs coming from the New York Jets. I mean, you look at Quinnen Williams, some of those New York Jets pass rushers from the defensive line. I think he can really bring a lot of that here, and I think he can elevate. I think out of the baseline of what we have today, I think he can really elevate the most is who I would probably
choose. Think we have the talent up there to actually be effective this year in that
I think so. I mean, you just look at the measurables and the quality of players we brought in. Even last year, I mean, I know Nick, I mean, another alien. I mean, for someone that size to be able to bend the edge and set it the way he does. But I think even Nick would say this. I think if you kind of look at the stats, like, it's kind of a team effort. Like, yeah, he got the sacks, but it's not a one-man wrecking crew. Like, you have to collapse that pocket and set the edge for Nick to kind of get in there. So, yeah, he was the best of the bunch, but I really think that defensive line is going to take that jump under Scruggs. And I think we maybe sell them short a little bit of how good they really are.
Can I ask you who you think the alien will be this year? Like, who's going to be the breakout guy up front defensively?
Oh, that's tough. I want to go Rodas just because I love watching him, because I think a lot of people kind of count him out, and he's just a dog up there. But I'm going to go with someone that kind of gets, I don't want to say doo-dooed on a little bit, but someone that some people on the show, I'm not saying anybody else, but because to be honest, I don't remember who maybe not been so high on him, but I really like Gio. I feel like
that would have been me.
Yeah, there's something about Gio. He has the measurables. He's just a mammoth. I mean, you get him with Brady Collins for 9 months before the season kicks off, and you just tell him, hey, we don't need you to eat blockers anymore. Why don't you go sick him? And I feel like his size and speed obviously he's no Keanu Benton. There's not many of them are. That's why he's probably going to be a top 2-round draft pick. But I really think Gio is going to blossom under Greg Scruggs and bringing over that knowledge, because he plays a similar position to Quinnen Williams. Now, make no mistake that he's not a Quinnen Williams, but I think he can have a bigger impact than what he's had before.
You bring up an X factor about Brady Collins, right? We don't absolutely know where anyone's ceiling is right now because of their strength gains.
I'm going to go out here now. I just want to say this, because long-term, I think Scruggs is capable of having a Phil Longo type effect on the defense, in that I think I could really see him become an exceptional recruiter for Wisconsin.
Yeah,
because he's just got a personality that is
I'm not
huge.
playing.
I'm not playing.
He's aggressive, and he's exactly what you want to see from a recruiter. I love what we saw with him with Howard. I'm really looking forward to what he can do, having a whole cycle to get the guys that he wants in on defense.
For sure. And before I go to the second question, if you wanted to go to it, I think this would kind of play to your heart as a San Francisco 49er. I mean, if Robert Saleh had him be his assistant defensive line coach, he's no schlub.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
clearly
It's very
Robert Saleh is good at identifying defensive coaching talent. And if he was going to bring him over to New York Jets, I think we got a gem on the defensive line.
That's a
coach.
great point. Yeah, that's one of the better defensive minds in football. So that's a great point.
And then my second question, the more of the silly one, and then I could sit down, was I know this is going kind of back on the Gophers because, I mean, nobody likes the Gophers. So, but let's just say hypothetically, you know, we hang, I don't know, half 100 on them. I'm willing to bet, because this is a live podcast and it's recorded, I will donate a dollar for every point we score to the NIL collective, the varsity collective that Fickle can bring. So if you want to score 100, that'd be awesome too. Just so we can sink that boat good and gone. But if you were to encounter 4 Gophers players that were upset about that result, and they wanted to meet you in the tunnel, Michigan State style, which 4 Wisconsin Badgers would you want first off the bus? And while you think, I'll set.
Wait, is Scruggs allowed to be part of this? Because I'm grabbing him first.
And while your think tank goes, I'll let you know. I think a lot of people sleep on Jake Chaney. He's in the 2 deep. He's on my side. I would take Travion Blaylock. If his dad is watching this show, his dad is a monster, athletic specimen himself. I'd definitely take Travion. Jack Nelson.
That's on my list.
Yeah.
Nelson's the first one I thought of.
Yeah.
I mean, he would fight Santa Claus. That guy is about that action. And I wasn't sure who my third would be. I do like Braylon. He's got the measurables, but then there's just something about like a Hunter Wohler type. Just, you know, he'll stick his nose in the fan. I even thought about Maitre. I don't know enough about him yet, but definitely those 3. Chaney.
So really quick, just to be super clear on this, any players from last year's team or just this year?
No, this year.
I would say Boosh would be my first one. The punter would throw him around.
No, current spring roster. No, nobody that we've been brought in. Just
so
what we have now.
Nelson's my first one. You got to go Nelson, and then I'm going Kamoi Latu. So really quick side note with Brady Collins, I asked him which skill player would be the first one across the field if you put $1 million on the other side. And Brady Collins said, are there any rules? Because if there's no rules, Kamoi Latu will win. He said that guy's a freak.
Yeah, he is not afraid to mix it up.
So give me Latu, give me Nelson, and then I think I just need a couple really big bouncers. So give me Paez and that's a great question.
Daryl Peterson's got some link too. He was in my.
Maybe Bowlers. 270 now. I'm gonna go Bowlers.
I'm going Peterson. I'm going Jung Meta because I just think he's awesome, and I think he would definitely be the guy that I'd want there. Definitely Nelson. So I got Nelson, Meta, Peterson, and who? Ches. We got a Ches. No, I don't think so.
All right, that's a vote. That seems like a vote of 1, but I love Ches. But
I'm taking. You know what? I'll take Rodas.
That's good.
I'll take Rodas.
I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna keep it going with Jack Nelson.
Yeah.
Latu, Petroyski. I think I would bring out there that hair. I got to get him involved in the fight. Reminds me of the guy from the program. So go with that. And I actually think Turner's got some.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
too.
I like Turner.
Both those middle.
Yeah, that's a great question.
I think
He's got some brute in him.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly biased because I saw his dad posting those pictures, and his dad's a football coach. He's grown up in the gauntlet.
Yeah,
it's like, man, Chaney, he would be my choice.
So
he's definitely in there.
Chaney's an interesting one because his dad came on the show for a little bit, and he talked about really quickly. We talked about change with him, and he said, change can be good, and I think that's a lot of what we're potentially seeing at the Wisconsin program
for sure. And that's good leadership, telling his son to stick it out, because so often with the transfer portal, everybody wants to leave, and that's just a good father right there, telling him, hey, stick it out, kind of deal with your lumps. You're going to get there, and I think that's awesome. I like Chaney. Yeah. Thank you, boys, for your time.
Thank you, man.
That's awesome. Love the community you guys built. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
That was good.
Yeah,
right?
That was a great question.
Yeah,
great question.
Yeah, we got more. This is awesome. And again, if anyone else wants to jump up, please do. Like, that's what this is all about. What's going on, my friend?
Hi. Hey, so I'm David. I grew up, born and raised here in Wisconsin, and I've been thinking about this one for a while because you always mentioned about bringing on people from like the Badger sports that don't get quite as much love. And I have grown up around volleyball. I'm an avid Badger volleyball fan, and I've played it myself. So if you guys need someone to come and pretend to be an expert on volleyball for a little while, I'm here.
I
you
love
go.
it. Yeah, absolutely.
But on an actual question side, you kind of talk a lot, Ryan, about being in the honeymoon phase right now with Badgers football. And I think even like a little bit tomorrow, like going in, we're going to get to see them play, but we're not going to get to see them play.
Yeah.
Right.
So when we line up that first week 1, what do you need to see from both the offense and defense to get you, I'll say first to meet your expectations, and then to get you to the point of saying we're going to win the Big Ten and we're going to go to the playoff?
You're the one that's kind of been low on the defense, Ryan. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you need to do. I want you to go first on this.
I think I went first on every one. Especially if we're talking about
All
what we
right,
need to see to get to the playoffs. I almost felt like that's a believe with Rajiv thing, right? Because I think he's already there.
Go ahead, Justin.
I'll go. Offensively, I need to see a crisp passing game. I need to see them go out there and basically look like they can carve up a team. On the run game, consistent running. I don't need to necessarily see them just gash, but I want to see 5 yards a pop when they get out there. If a guy is consistently getting push and we're getting 5-6 yards every time, which we've seen on some of the old Badger teams, that's what I need to see on the offense. And then defensively, I need to see a pass rush, and I need to see the corners look like they can ball hawk a little bit and go out there and make some plays.
All right, so offensively for me, I need the most inventive play not to be the jet sweep. Okay, that's number one. We need
the Wildcat. The 2005
Right,
Wildcat. Let's do
we
it.
need some more inventive. That we should see, but in reality, yeah. I mean, look, I want to see us spread it out like we expect, and I think the important thing is we need to still be able to run the ball effectively, right? I mean, we talk a lot about the pass, but we still have Braylon Allen, right? We still got Ches Malusi. We still have these big offensive linemen. We need to be able to run the ball effectively and have true balance offensively. So that's one. Defensively, speed. That to me is going to be the difference, because when you play a system like what Luke Fickell played at Cincinnati, speed is critical. And we have that's defensive back speed, that's linebacker speed, and we have to show that. And we need to hang half 100 on Buffalo, and then I'm going to come on the reaction show and say we're going to the playoff.
Yeah, it's going to be all believe with Rajiv. Those are all really good things. I would boil it down to something a little. You need to see a lot, right? It's hard to say exactly what you need to see. I think it's a great question, but with so many every new coach, right? We talked about it. I'm not worried about the offense at all. I'm just at that point. I need to see a pass rush. If there's one thing I'm worried about this year, I've talked about it, it's a pass rush. Losing Herbig, losing Benton, those are your two big guys up front. And as much as we like Petroski, I mean, all last year with injury, essentially, right? Varner was playing at a lower level. Like, I just am not confident we have a pass rush. And I love Rodas and Mullins and those guys from a run defense standpoint. I'm not sure if they're pass rushers. We might be a year or two away from that. If you can't rush the passer, you can't win a title. The other sneaky one is special teams worries me a little bit because we don't know who's punting. I mean, not really. And as much as we like Vakos, the crazy kicker, and we love his mojo on social media, and he did really well at Ohio last year. He hasn't kicked in the Big Ten either. So special teams sneakily can steal a game or two from you and shift it from the win column to the loss column, or vice versa. So to me, those are the two things week one. If our special teams looks great, I think we're in an excellent shape. And if we can get to the pass rush, or if we can get to the passer, we can make them uncomfortable. I think the ceiling for the team is unbelievable, but I'm not sure that'll happen.
Can we just have Vujanovic grow a mustache and say that he's like a grad transfer coming in?
Can he get
Van Dyke's been punting, so we'll see. Yeah.
So
what do you think, man?
So realistically, what I think I need to see is I just need to see our offense come out and look different, like very different. Like, I want to see us throw the ball around. I want to see us put up more than 28 points on a bad team. I want to see Braylon Allen run through a hole and not have 5 linebackers watching him. I just need to see difference. Like, I don't care if it looks a little shaky against Buffalo. I just want it to be different, and I want it to be explosive, and I want it to be fun to watch. And defensively, I think just we need to see that same kind of grit that we always see from Badger defenses, but then we also need to see kind of the speed and the athleticism that I feel like we kind of could get away with not having as much of when we were just so good at being where we need to be to stop plays.
No, No, it's really good. I can't tell you. I was hoping Phil Longo in the first play of the year will come out with 3 running backs and like 7 tight ends and just troll everybody. Like come out in the barge, right? And no receivers and just have fun
Goal
with
line
it.
offense.
Yeah. But no, that's great stuff, man. Thank you for jumping on for sure. And volleyball, yes, let's do it. Let's do a volleyball show, man. I'm all about it. I just don't know the sport.
That's fair.
But let's do it.
Thanks, guys.
Anybody else want to jump up? If not, we got some more comments. And
Thank you.
yeah, we're at about 35 minutes on the show already. So
I would bring up something. I was having a great discussion with Carson. I don't know where Carson is, if he's still here, but there's Carson. Carson asked a good question about just overall, what do we think of Macintosh so far? Like, you know, I mean, Carson's a newer Badger fan. I think he's still in school or something. I'm not sure, but you know, like overall Macintosh, what has he done for the program and in the whole athletic department? Where are you guys at so far on everything we've seen from him?
I think he's been incredible so far. I think a lot of people were concerned that it was going to be Barry Jr. kind of when he came in, and they were worried that he would be a little too close to the Wisconsin, you know, bringing in another Wisconsin guy rather than going out there and opening things up and saying who's the best possible guy I can get. And I think there's been some difference there. And not that Barry was bad by any means. I think that he did a pretty good job with most of his hires, like the program. He could have had a lame duck. We could have had a Nebraska situation where we push out somebody who's decent and we end up just collapsing. And we didn't have that. But I think the 2 hires that he's had to make so far have been absolutely A+. Like you can't he got probably the best hockey coach he could get. And he got probably the most sought after coaching hire for football that was available. So
he took a program, he took an athletic department that had overall very high floor, good stuff, and turned it next level, right? I mean, Fickle wasn't even on our radar, and I was certainly the one screaming for Leonard to get the interim tag removed. That was me. I was all about removing that interim tag, but you know, realistically, Fickle wasn't even on our radar. It's not even close. And to think of where we are now. And again, I feel like, and I've said this a couple weeks ago, I think the pressure is now on Gard, right?
Yeah.
He feels that pressure after what happened to the hockey program and what's happened with Fickle. He now feels that same pressure. So as far as I'm concerned, and Carson and I were talking about it earlier, it's a whole new level shift for the program. And it's exactly it's a great time to be a Badger because of what Macintosh has done.
Yeah, and I had a chance to talk to Carson too. So excited to get to talk to so many people. He's awesome. Came down here. He's just game changing, right? Macintosh is game changing, and he's fearless. Like that's the one thing. Like it would have been incredibly easy as a new athletic director to come in and not make a big change. The easiest path in the world would have been just promoting Jim Leonard, and every single Badger fan, everybody in the media would have said, "Yeah, that makes sense." And then he would have had no pressure on him. What Macintosh has done is created pressure on himself, right? Because if this doesn't work, and let's say Jim Leonard goes on to do something, and you lost that opportunity, like that Macintosh will lose his job over this.
Yeah.
But you want a guy who's willing to throw the dice to make the right move. And he did. Luke Fickle is a home run addition.
Home run.
And it's something that nobody expected because he's a younger athletic director. He's a Barry Alvarez disciple. He's a Wisconsin guy. Chris is a Wisconsin guy. And whether it was planned completely or how it worked out, we don't know. But the end result is Luke Fickle is coaching the Wisconsin Badgers. And that's what people need to get excited about because the end result is an absolute home run.
I mean, the easy move would have been to hire Leonard because if it didn't work out, it wouldn't be held against him in the same way. Now, I'm not sure that Fickle would be held against you just because of the pedigree that he's shown so far. Like he's a guy who, because of what he did at Cincinnati, if it doesn't work, nobody can look at it with revisionist history and say like this was a mistake hire. Everyone would say this was the smart hire to make if it's available to you. So I don't know if that one necessarily is going to be held. Like I don't think he can be booted for it unless this goes down in flames. He would have to have like a Urban Meyer in the NFL level explosion for things to go wrong.
There's a great comment here from Jeffrey. He says Justin looks jacked. He's been hanging out with Brady Collins. Let's go. He's been eating those Built Bars and hanging out with Brady. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think unless somebody else wants to come up, I think we'll wrap it up there. We've held people for a long time. Really do appreciate everybody. Again, everybody will watch on the show in the chat. That's going to see it later. Thank you so much. Yeah. On Wisconsin, let's enjoy the launch tomorrow.
Let's go.
And hey, everybody, again, we'll be down here again tomorrow morning before the launch. You know, if you want to come down and see us, maybe have a drink or two.
11 a.m., right, guys?
Yep, 11 a.m.
tomorrow. Yeah. All right.
And on that note, hopefully we see some of you down. Hopefully you make it down to the launch and support the guys and get your first look at what Luke Fickle's Badgers look like.
And thanks again to SconnieBar. Fantastic
Yes.
venue.
Yes, thank you,
Yes.
SconnieBar.
Yep. On Wisconsin, let's go.